What's up, fellas? I got a fun one for you today. So I have a series called These Exercises Build the Most Muscle. I talk about cool exercises that you can do, workouts that you can try that will get you more jacked. But there's something really important that I want to talk about today as a side episode kind of deal. We're going to rank the most and least important things that you need to worry about when you're trying to build muscle. This is going to break down the staples, important things, icing on the cake, and then things that are completely irrelevant. So first, S tier, aptly named staples tier. Couldn't have staples tier without talking about the basic staples that you'll need to take with you anywhere that you go in your training, whether that's strength, size, athleticism, whatever. You need to eat in a calorie surplus. You need to hydrate. You need to get your electrolytes in. You need to prioritize sleep and sleep as much as possible. And you need to try hard. None of anything that you do in the gym is going to matter as much if you're not maximizing those things, especially calories. Most people do not eat to support their training because of ab anxiety, so fellas that are lean and don't want to lose their abs. Here's the thing. Training is the most important thing to getting an aesthetic, strong, functional, whatever physique. And if you're not eating to support that training, you're hustling in reverse. Another important thing that comes to mind first and foremost is technique. Now that's not, you have to lift this way type of conversation that I'm having with you, but it's knowing what your technique does and what that technique provides for your specific goals. So if you want to get jacked, there is a way that you lift to maximize the target muscle. Much the same, there's also a way to lift the most amount of weight possible. For hypertrophy enthusiasts, aka Johnny bodybuilders, it's just going to be ensuring that your technique is stimulating the target muscle. And then for my strength enthusiasts, it's going to be, am I lifting the most amount of weight possible while also maintaining safety? Next thing that I can think of, just from a coach perspective, is buy-in. Me and my buddy Sam talk about this a lot, but you have to buy into what you're doing. You have to trust that it is going to work, that if you do it, it's simple, it's repeatable, it's going to give you the results that you're looking for. There are a lot more fellas that get jacked on just okay programs by giving their all to them than there are to Sammy sausage heads that don't give their all to their eating, their effort, their consistency, but then they hyper fixate on, well, this is the optimal program. A lot of people, beginner and advanced, fall prey to this one especially, but you have to buy in to what you're doing. Part of buying into something is having fun doing it, and that's the next thing. There's a lot of different ways that you can have fun with what you're doing. It's doing exercises you like, doing them in a way that you enjoy, while also still getting the benefits that you're looking for. Cluster sets, we love cluster sets. That's one that I've brought to a lot of you guys' attention. No matter what that looks like specifically, having fun in a safe, predictable, and productive manner is super important, bro. Now, to balance that and to rein it all back in, you got to do what you need before what you want to do, bro. So I call it the needs versus wants analysis. I talk about this in my self-coaching video, the Berserk method, which I'm going to make a follow-up to in May, by the way, so stay tuned for that. But if we were all, children again, and we all had our way, we would fucking eat ice cream instead of meat and potatoes. But that's not productive to being a big, strong boy, right? So much the same with your training, you have to do what you need first. So if you have small legs, but you want to do Zercher squats, and they don't really target your legs that well, but they allow you to move a lot of weight, and your goal, your need is to get bigger legs, maybe fill up your volume with a squat or an exercise that works your quads better before you prioritize the Zercher squat, because that's more of a want. And that's just for example. Now, last but not least, in the staple tier, this is super important, bro, so listen up. It's the fear of missing out. It's the, can I add this to my program? What if I add this? Well, this would be fun to do. Do only what you need to progress and not everything that you can do at once. There's a big thing that me and Sam talk about, wherein a lot of fellas that we work with, or even ourselves, want to do all these different things when really, especially strength training, because your training economy is limited because you're trying to get specifically good at a few things. You have to do only what you can do well. If you can add something to your training program or to a specific session, but you're half-assing it because you're tired from everything else, why are you doing that thing? You're only introducing more fatigue, and you're not even getting the best benefit that you can out of that thing because you're doing it shittily. Now for the importance here. This is more so like nuts and bolts stuff that kind of help everything in the staples tier function to its best. The first and foremost thing and importance here that comes to mind is generally knowing how to make progress in your training. whether that's for size or for strength. For size, the basic thing that you need to understand is you need to add volume, reps, sustainably to your training while maintaining good technique that allows you to field the target muscles, essentially. That's as giga-brain as you need to make it. Double progression, dynamic double progression. That's linked in the description. Watch that video after you watch this one. Now, in terms of strength, Sam has a really cool analogy that I like to use as well called the battering ram analogy. You're not sieging any castle walls by tapping a fucking battering ram into the wall. You have to run it back and then run it forward, right? So you have to, with that in mind, pull back in your training, work back up, right? Linear periodization is a good way to go about that, but there's a lot of different ways you can go about it. There's a lot of different giga-brain progression models that you can use for strength, but essentially that is what you're going to be doing no matter what type of strength periodization that you're using. Linear periodization is the simplest, so that's what I recommend you start off with. There's RPE periodization. There's lots of different things you can try, but conceptually, that's what you need to understand at a minimum. Next up, wait, hear me out, okay? So I'm gonna say what the next important one is, and I just want you to hear me out. Basic biomechanics. I'm not talking about the giga-brain, galaxy brain, TikTok, abduction of the humerus joint at a 50-degree angle bullshit. I'm saying, like, look, man, you need to understand, and John Meadows had a beautiful way of putting this, like for the back, for instance. It's all about the angles, baby. You gotta have your fucking arm at a certain angle to work certain parts of your back. Close in, lats. Farther out, upper back, traps, rear delts. It's things like that. The Final Answer series in my playlist breaks down all of that biomechanic word salad into very simple to understand terms. Specifically the chest, legs, back, and arms segments that I made in that. So please check that out. The shoulders as well. That's important because that's going to be instrumental in understanding, you know, how to target certain muscles, which brings us into our next important thing. Knowing when an exercise works for you and keeping it in long term. Bro, how are you ever going to make progress if you're not doing something that is good for you? I made a video talking exactly about how to do that. Here's a little clip from it. Check that out after you watch this one. The last thing on the importance here, bro, all jokes aside, is just knowing how to separate your goals from performance and size. I don't want you specifically to pick one over the other. Do whatever the fuck you want to do, right? Now, both strength training and hypertrophy training are going to have elements of both in them. So there's a performance element in hypertrophy training, absolutely. And then, much the same in strength training, you need to have a certain amount of muscle mass to lift a certain amount of weight. Now, on a small scale, this is going to infer your exercise selection as well. No one gives a shit how much you leg press if you're squatting one plate per side. No one cares how much you hamstring curl if you're only deadlifting one plate per side. That's just an extreme way of saying, like, look, bro, if you're spending all this training economy on what should be a developmental exercise, leg press, hamstring curls, yet you're not developing yourself with your performance exercises, what are you doing? Especially if your goals are performance minded. Now, much the same, if your goals are hypertrophy and you're using all this weight and you're doing your reps and you're following your double progression, you're doing everything that you need to do that was in the staple tier, yet you're not targeting the muscle, what are you doing? You're treating a developmental exercise like a performance metric when your goals are to get more jacked. So the icing tier stuff between you and I is mostly just stuff that is only important or useful for the most part when you're already jacked, when you're already strong. It's kind of like, that's neat. That's how I want you to handle it. So that noise that you make when you find something to be, you know, cool or whatever, do that. But focus more on the staples. First and foremost thing that comes to mind for me is the stimulus to fatigue ratio. If you're barbell rowing 55 pounds per, total, or a plate per side or whatever, don't worry if the exercise is over fatiguing your lower back. Don't worry about is squats over fatiguing my knees, is whatever over fatiguing me. Nothing is going to over fatigue you at this stage, bro, if you're doing it with a proper form. Stimulus to fatigue is a ratio, meaning for the amount of stimulus that you generate, you get a certain amount of fatigue. And that comes into play with how much weight you're lifting, right? Given the type of form that you're using, of course. But no matter how you slice it, if you're only capable of squatting 135 pounds, bro, the amount of fatigue that you're generating from that is nothing. You eat, you sleep, you're gonna be able to go to the gym and do more and not have to worry about your knees and your back. Again, provided that you're using good form. Next up is finding an optimal rep range. That is cool, knowing an optimal rep range for a specific exercise for you specifically. But listen to what the fuck I just said. You specifically. Optimal applies to you specifically. There are exercises that are optimal on paper that don't do shit for me. Rep ranges that are optimal on paper that don't do shit for me. But knowing what rep range works well for me on an exercise or works better than other rep ranges allows me personally to hedge a lot of the time that I would spend trying to progress at something. But at a beginner level or intermediate level or at most levels, you don't need to worry about those things. You need to worry about the staples and the important stuff. This next one is going to be counting or knowing your exact macros. Let me tell you something, bro, because a lot of people are probably curious what my macros are. I don't know, and I don't care. I can tell you how many calories I eat roughly every day. I can tell you that I drink water regularly. I can tell you that I get my electrolytes in. I can tell you that I get protein in every meal. I can tell you that I eat my vegetables. I can tell you all these different things about staples in my diet, but what is knowing how many grams of carbs I eat specifically going to do for me? I'm trying to get jacked and stacked, bro. I know that if I'm eating the calories to support my training, I'm eating carbs to support my training, and I'm eating protein and fats to support recovery, bro, like, what does the exact amount matter? It doesn't. What is knowing, in a study that was conducted on untrained high schoolers where they're not really accounting for the form that they're using and their limb lengths and all these different things. That's their age, the fact that they're untrained, and the fact that they're doing like a fucking RDL, for example. What is knowing the percentage of hamstring versus glute that's worked in that exercise in this study that is different from another study that you could read on the same thing going to add to your training compared to eating in a calorie surplus, compared to working hard, compared to knowing basic periodization, compared to doing exercises that work well for you and keeping in and knowing when exercises are working well for you? If you put that type of thing on par with the staples or important things, bro, you're a unicorn. Well, if I do 8 sets of hamstrings and 6 sets of chest and da-da-da. Listen, bro, how many sets do you need to progress in your training? That is the amount of sets that you need to do. If you can do 2 sets of an exercise twice a week and you are improving on that exercise and you are getting bigger, you're gaining weight, you're getting stronger, why are you doing more? Why are you fixated on the optimal amount when you're making good progress already? Let me tell you something. My optimal volume and your optimal volume are different, and that is like the bottom of the fucking barrel thing that you need to worry about. Much the same, well, would I be making better gains if I squatted 5 times a week or 3 times a week or bench 6 times a week? If you're making progress doing each of those things twice or once, why are you worried about that? Fellas, that's all she wrote. This was a lot of fun to put together. If you have any questions about what we talked about, please let me know. Now, after you've watched this video, please watch these here, wherever they are at the screen, and I'll see y'all guys in the next one. Have a good day.